Hello again. So in this video, I show you some structures that you will need every day virtually, like loops, if statements, and a few more. So I create again a new program for my testing, call it structures. And we learned about variables, so let's start with a few structures. So the first structure we're gonna use is an if statement. And we write a little program, and with this program you will also see how to use the console to take input. So I'm gonna start with the input verb and input a numeric variable x, and now we have x to work with. And now I can, for instance, write a little structure to say, is x larger than 10, then we output something, and if not, then we output something else. So the keyword, you may have guessed it, that we need is if x larger than 10, then, and we use the message box again from the last time, a equals msg box, x is larger than 10, and then there's the else verb. And you see I do a little nice indentation, and if it's not larger than 10, then it's obviously smaller than or equal to 10. And in order to close the if statement, there's two verbs that you could use here. The formal one is the end if, which is known in many languages. Then there's a shorter one, which is phi, that I sometimes use when I do quick, hacky programs. But many companies have a rule to use end if, so this is what I'm going to do as well. You see, by the way, that the keywords in BBJ are case insensitive, so I probably shouldn't have mixed that. Make it nice here and say if then else. So one thing to know is this is a multi-line if statement, so make sure to structure it always like this. Have one line with the if ending in the then keyword, then do your first block, then do a single line that carries the else, and again do a single line carrying the end if. And if there is no else, I mean, you may have guessed it, it's going to look like this, but I'm going to put a block back in to exercise this program. So make sure to follow this for multi-line statement. There are single line if statements. Read the documentation about if you want to learn more about it. But for a structured multi-line if statement, always follow the structure with the if and the then in one line. The line has to end in then, and then in the next line you start your block. It doesn't have to be indented like here, but it needs to start in a fresh line. That's important. And now I can run this program just to verify. There's an input here. I can enter 11, and our program is correct. 11 is larger than 10. So we're done fine. And here I didn't put the by or release in the program. So I just type by, and the program finishes. So the other structure I'm going to show you is the for next loop. So I just put it here behind it, and here the structure is similar to maybe basic. For I introduce a counter variable equals 1 to 10. So we just want to count up from 1 to 10. Oh no, let's make it even x. So let's count up to x. And then we say next, and we just do a print I. So what should happen? We input x, we have our little message box, and then we see all the numbers from 1 to the value we have entered above, and we just print them to the console in this case. One thing you may have noticed is that I didn't use the counter variable with the next. So this is perfectly legal since it's always 100% clear which loop is referred to. But if the code is a bit more complex, it might be wise to add the counter variable, which is also allowed here next I, so that when you have a complex program with nested loops and you look at the next statement, it's always clear which one is referred. It's probably also left to the coding style rules of your company if you're allowed to omit it, or if you always have to write it. But you could omit it, and in short programs it might be okay to be without it. So I save the program and run it, and I type in 5 this time. So 5 is smaller than 10, so our if statement still works. And now we see it's counting up from 1 to 5 here in the for next loop. So there are 2 more types of loops which I leave you for homework to read about in the documentation. One is repeat until, and this is now an error because it's not fully correct. Of course, there's something needed, but you're going to read about it in the docs. And the other thing, one which we use very often, is called while went. So while went, you could say while I smaller than 5, then you say I equals I plus 1, and repeat until I larger than 5, something like this. So you're going to read about it and play with it. So write a few programs that's using loops, do something like the Fibonacci numbers or something else, and get familiar with loops and the if statement.